The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a knife through silk, its desperate signal reaching across star systems with a message that would change everything. Commander Zeftar of the Galactic Coalition Council stood before the massive holographic display in the Emergency Response Center, his forearms trembling as he watched the data streams pour in from the Outer Rim territories. The Vorthak Empire had returned. After 300 years of peace, the nightmare that had once consumed entire star systems was spreading across the galaxy again like a plague. The hologram showed red zones expanding across the outer colonies, each blinking light representing worlds that had gone silent, billions of lives snuffed out or worse, converted into the mindless drones that serve the Vorthak Collective. "How many have we lost?" Zeftar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His species, the Kalari, were known for their emotional control, but even he struggled to maintain composure as he watched his civilization crumble in real time. 47 systems in the past week, reported Lieutenant Zura, her insectoid features clicking with distress. The pattern is the same everywhere. They arrive, deploy their conversion technology, and within hours the entire population is either dead or turned into their servants. Our fleets can't even slow them down. The Galactic Coalition had been formed after the First Vorthak War, uniting hundreds of species under a common banner of peace and mutual protection. For 3 centuries, it had been humanity's greatest achievement in the galaxy, a federation where disputes were settled with words instead of weapons, where trade flowed freely between worlds, and where scientific advancement benefited all. But none of that mattered now. The Coalition's greatest strength, its diversity and democratic decision-making process, had become its greatest weakness when faced with an enemy that moved with singular purpose and devastating efficiency. "What about the defense fleets?" Zeftar asked, though he already knew the answer from the grim expressions around him. "Admiral Krexval's Third Fleet engaged them at Proxima Theta," Zara replied, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "They lasted 18 minutes. The 7th and 9th Fleets are pulling back to defensive positions around the core worlds, but at this rate, she didn't need to finish." Everyone in the room understood the mathematics of extinction. The Vorthak weren't just conquering territory. They were harvesting it, stripping each world of its resources and population before moving on to the next target. Their technology had advanced significantly during their 300-year absence, and what had once been a difficult enemy to fight had become an unstoppable force of nature. "The Council is demanding answers," said General Morduck, his reptilian features twisted with frustration. "Every species is asking why their fleets are being recalled to defend their home worlds instead of mounting a coordinated response. They don't understand that we're not fighting for territory anymore. We're fighting for time." Zeftar closed his primary eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on him. As Supreme Commander of Coalition Forces, the responsibility for finding a solution rested squarely on his shoulders. But what solution could there be against an enemy that had learned from every defeat, adapted to every strategy, and returned stronger than ever? "Sir, there's something else," Zara said, her voice hesitant. "We've been monitoring communication channels across the Outer Rim, trying to coordinate evacuation efforts. We're picking up distress calls from species that aren't part of the Coalition, independent worlds, nomadic fleets, even some of the hermit civilizations that have avoided galactic politics for millennia. And they're all saying the same thing. They're asking for help, begging anyone who will listen to save them from the Vorthak. Some of these calls are coming from species we've never even met before, Commander. The Vorthak aren't just targeting Coalition worlds, they're targeting everyone." The implications hit Zeftar like a physical blow. The Vorthak weren't seeking to conquer the galaxy piece by piece. They were conducting a systematic extermination of all sentient life, working their way through every inhabited system regardless of political affiliation or technological level. This wasn't a war, it was genocide on a galactic scale. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. General Morduck consulted his tactical display, running calculations with grim efficiency. "Based on their current rate of advance and our defensive capabilities, 6 months. maybe 8 before they reach the core systems. Less if they split their forces and attack along multiple vectors. 6 months to save a galaxy. 6 months to find a miracle that had eluded the greatest military minds in Coalition history. Zeftar had commanded fleets in the border skirmishes with the hegemony, had negotiated peace treaties with species that communicated through electromagnetic pulses, had even survived the plague years on Kepler 442b. But this was beyond anything in his experience. "What about the archives?" he asked suddenly. "The sealed record from the First Vorthack War. There might be something we missed, some weapon or strategy that was classified too highly for general access." Lieutenant Zara's mandibles stopped clicking for a moment. "Sir, those records are sealed under Omega-level security protocols. Accessing them would require unanimous approval from all Council species. And even then, we'd need authorization from the Founders," General Morduck finished. "The original species that established the Coalition. Most of them are either extinct or have retreated so far into isolation that we haven't heard from them in decades." Zeftar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Founders, the 5 species that had originally united to defeat the Vorthack 300 years ago. The Etherians, masters of energy manipulation. The Crystalline Collective, living computers with processing power beyond imagination. The Void Walkers, who could manipulate space-time itself. The Psions, telepathic beings capable of coordinating fleets across vast distances without traditional communication. And the humans. "The humans," he said aloud, the word hanging in the air like a physical presence. The reaction was immediate. General Morduck's scales shifted to a darker hue, a sign of deep unease among his species. Lieutenant Zara's clicking became rapid and agitated. Even the normally stoic bridge crew turned to stare at their commander with a mixture of surprise and fear. "Sir," Zara said carefully, "the humans withdrew from galactic civilization over 200 years ago. They sealed their borders, cut off all communication, and made it clear that any attempt to contact them would be considered an act of war. Even if we could reach them, even if they were still the same species they once were, why would they help us?" It was a reasonable question. Humanity's departure from the Galactic Coalition had been one of the most traumatic events in galactic history, second only to the original Vorthack War itself. No one talked openly about what had driven them to such drastic isolation, but everyone knew the stories. The whispered rumors about what humans had been forced to become during the war. The terrible weapons they had developed. The prices they had paid for victory. Because Zeftar said slowly, "If the Vorthack succeed, there won't be a galaxy left for them to isolate themselves from." The truth was, humanity had been the key to victory in the First War, but that victory had come at a cost that few species were willing to acknowledge. The humans had done things, created things, become things that had horrified even their allies. When the war ended and the Vorthack were driven back into dark space, the humans had looked around at what they had become and made a choice that still echoed through galactic politics. They had withdrawn from civilization entirely, retreating to their original solar system and establishing a quarantine zone around their territory that no ship had crossed in 2 centuries. Attempts at communication had been met with automated warnings, then weapons fire, then silence. Most species had been content to let them fade into legend, grateful that the terrifying weapons humanity had developed were locked away with their creators. But now, with extinction staring the galaxy in the face, those weapons might be their only hope. "The Council will never approve it," General Morduck said flatly. "Half the species still have nightmares about human military doctrine. The other half consider them extinct. And even if we could convince them, how would we even find Earth? Their entire system is cloaked by technology we still don't understand." Zeftar was quiet for a long moment, watching the red zones on the tactical display continue to expand. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were dying while he stood in the safety of the Coalition's most secure facility, debating political protocols and ancient grudges. "Lieutenant Zara," he said finally, "prepare a priority alpha message to all Council representatives. Emergency session, maximum authority." and pull everything we have on human space, navigation data, old trade routes, anything that might help us find a way through their defensive perimeter. Sir, the risks of doing nothing are extinction. Zeftar cut her off. The risks of contacting humanity are uncertain. I'll take uncertain over extinction every time. As the staff scrambled to carry out his orders, Zeftar remained standing before the tactical display, watching the red zones creep closer to the heart of galactic civilization. Somewhere out there, beyond the frontier of explored space, humanity waited in self-imposed exile. They had withdrawn from the galaxy to escape what they had become, but perhaps what they had become was exactly what the galaxy needed now. The emergency session convened within hours, representatives from every major species gathering in the council chambers, either in person or through quantum entanglement communication. The debate was immediate and fierce, with delegates shouting in dozens of languages while translation systems struggled to keep up with the emotional intensity. "You're asking us to wake a sleeping monster," declared Ambassador Threlka of the Aquatic Confederation, her bio-suit bubbling with agitation. The humans didn't withdraw from civilization. They were exiled by their own conscience. What does that tell you about what they're capable of? It tells me they have a conscience, Zeftar replied calmly, which is more than we can say about the Vorthack. The humans fought to save the galaxy once before. They made sacrifices that still give us nightmares. But they won. At what cost? Demanded Counselor Vexnam of the Silicon Syndicate, his crystalline form refracting the chamber lights into angry rainbows. My people still remember the reports from the final battles. The humans didn't just defeat the Vorthack. They became something that scared their own allies. There's a reason they chose exile over continued cooperation. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, the mathematics of extinction won out over political fears. The vote was narrow, barely passing the required threshold, but it passed. The Galactic Coalition would attempt to contact humanity and request their aid against the returning Vorthack threat. The problem, as General Morduck had pointed out, was actually finding them. Human space had been quarantined for over 2 centuries, protected by automated defense systems and cloaking technology that made their entire star system invisible to conventional sensors. The few ships that had attempted to locate Earth over the years had simply vanished, whether destroyed by defenses or lost in the maze of false signals and spatial distortions that surrounded human territory. But Zeftar had an idea, one born of desperation, and the faint hope that humanity's isolation might not be as complete as everyone believed. The emergency beacon, he told his senior staff as they gathered in the secure planning chamber. The one we've been broadcasting on all frequencies, calling for aid against the Vorthack. If the humans are still monitoring galactic communications, if they still care about what happens to the galaxy they help save, they would have heard it. And Lieutenant Zura asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected where this was going. And if they're anything like the humans we remember, they won't be able to ignore a call for help, especially not when it comes from the same enemy they sacrificed so much to defeat the first time. It was a long shot, based more on hope than tactical analysis. But as the red zones on the tactical display continued to expand, eating away at the edges of civilized space like a cancer, hope was all they had left. The response came 3 days later, just as the coalition fleets were preparing to fall back to their final defensive positions around the core worlds. It wasn't a message, or a transmission, or even a diplomatic communication. It was a ship. One moment, the space around Coalition Command was empty except for the usual traffic of military vessels and supply convoys. The next moment, something materialized out of nothing. Not through hyperspace jump or quantum transit, but simply fading into existence as if reality itself had been edited. The ship was unlike anything in the current galactic database. Sleek and predatory, with lines that seemed to bend light around them, and a hull that appeared to absorb sensor scans rather than reflect them. It was clearly of human origin. The aesthetic was unmistakable, but it bore no resemblance to the ships that had fought in the First Vorthack War. Unknown vessel. This is Coalition Command. The traffic controller broadcast on all standard frequencies. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came in perfect galactic standard, though the voice that delivered it was distinctly human, calm, professional, and carrying an undertone of something that made Zeftar's scales ripple with unease. Coalition Command, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran vessel Redemption. We receive your distress call. We're here to help. The silence in Coalition Command was absolute. After 2 centuries of isolation, humanity had returned to the galaxy. The question now was whether they had come as saviors or as something else entirely. Captain Chun, Zeftar said, taking control of the communication himself. This is Supreme Commander Zeftar of Coalition Forces. We appreciate your response to our call for aid. The situation is dire. We know, came the immediate reply. We've been monitoring Vorthack expansion patterns. Permission to come aboard, Commander? We have a lot to discuss, and not much time to do it. As the human ship moved toward the docking bay with fluid grace that defied conventional physics, Zeftar couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change forever. Humanity had returned, but after 200 years of isolation and unknown development, what had they become? The docking bay fell silent as the human vessel settled into place with barely a whisper of displaced air. When the airlock cycled and Captain Chun stepped through, Zeftar felt his breath catch. She looked human enough. 2 arms, 2 legs, the familiar bipedal configuration. But there was something different about her movements, something that suggested capabilities beyond normal biological limitations. Commander, she said, extending her hand in the ancient human gesture of greeting. Thank you for the invitation. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. As do I, Captain, Zeftar replied, carefully taking her hand. Her grip was firm, but not aggressive, though he could sense tremendous strength held in careful check. Your people's return comes at a crucial moment. The Vorthack are approximately 43 days from reaching the core systems at their current rate of advance, Chen interrupted. We know. We've been watching. We've been preparing. Preparing for what? Captain Chen's smile was warm and entirely human, but her eyes held depths that Zeftar couldn't fathom. To finish what we started 300 years ago, Commander. To make sure the Vorthack never threaten anyone ever again. As they walked through the corridors of Coalition Command toward the Strategic Planning Center, Zeftar couldn't help but notice how other species reacted to the human captain's presence. Some stared in fascination, others in fear, but all with the recognition that something significant had just changed in the balance of galactic power. The meeting that followed would be remembered for centuries. The moment when humanity returned to the galaxy not as the idealistic young species that had once fought alongside the Coalition, but as something harder, more focused, and infinitely more dangerous. Captain Chun laid out her people's assessment of the Vorthack threat with clinical precision, displaying tactical knowledge that surpassed anything in Coalition databases. You've been fighting them wrong, she said simply, as holographic displays showed the human analysis of recent battles. You're treating them like a conventional enemy, trying to match their fleets, contest their territories, fight them on their terms. But the Vorthack aren't a conventional enemy. They're a cancer, and you don't fight cancer by negotiating with it. What are you suggesting? Zeftar asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Surgical removal, Chen replied, her expression never wavering. Cut out the diseased tissue before it spreads further. We know where their primary staging areas are, where their command structures are located, how their conversion technology works. We can end this war in a matter of weeks instead of fighting a losing battle for years. And the cost. For the first time since her arrival, Captain Chen hesitated. Everything has a cost, Commander. The question is whether you're willing to pay it to save what's left of galactic civilization. As the meeting continued into the night, Zeftar began to understand what humanity had become during their long exile. They hadn't abandoned the galaxy out of shame or exhaustion. They had withdrawn to become something capable of protecting it from threats like the Vorthack. They had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, developing weapons and strategies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But as Captain Chen outlined humanity's plan for ending the war, Zeftar couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make a deal with forces beyond their understanding. Humanity had returned to save the galaxy, but what would be left of them? And everyone else when the saving was done? The War Council convened at dawn, with representatives from every major coalition species gathering in the secure conference chamber deep within command headquarters. Captain Chen stood at the head of the table, her human features calm and composed as she faced a room full of beings whose ancestors had fought alongside her people 3 centuries ago. But the atmosphere was tense, charged with unspoken fears and ancient memories. "Before we begin," declared Ambassador Krethal of the Hegemony States, his massive form casting shadows across the conference table, "I think we all deserve to know exactly what humanity has become during your self-imposed exile. The ships, the technology, the capabilities you've demonstrated. None of this matches our historical records of human military capacity." Chen nodded, as if she had expected the question. "You're right to be concerned, Ambassador. We have changed, but not in the way you might think. When we withdrew from galactic civilization, we made a promise to ourselves and to the galaxy. We would never again allow our emotions, our limitations, or our political divisions to prevent us from protecting innocent life." She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the conference table, showing detailed technical specifications that made even the Coalition's best engineers lean forward with interest. "This is our current fleet composition. 47 vessels, each one built with technology that merges our biological creativity with synthetic enhancement. We've eliminated the weaknesses that made us vulnerable during the First War." General Morduck's scales darkened to an almost black hue. "Synthetic enhancement? Are you saying you've merged with machines?" "In a manner of speaking," Chen replied. "But not in the way the Vorthack convert other species. We maintain our individuality, our creativity, our capacity for growth and change. We simply enhanced our ability to process information, coordinate complex operations, and interface directly with our technology. The result is a military force capable of fighting the Vorthack on equal terms." Lieutenant Zara's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Captain, forgive the direct question, but are you still human?" The silence that followed was profound. Chen looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each representative before answering. "That depends on how you define humanity, Lieutenant. Are we still capable of love, compassion, sacrifice for others? Yes. Do we still make mistakes, feel fear, struggle with difficult choices? Yes. But we've also integrated capabilities that allow us to process tactical information in real time, coordinate our actions with perfect precision, and interface with weapons systems that would be impossible for unenhanced biological beings to operate." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "The question isn't whether we're still human, Lieutenant. The question is whether the galaxy is worth saving, regardless of what it takes to save it." Zeftar studied the human captain carefully. There was something in her manner, a controlled intensity that spoke of capabilities held in careful check. "Captain Chen, show us your plan for ending the war." The holographic display shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with Vorthack-controlled territories marked in aggressive red. Chen manipulated the display with fluid gestures, highlighting key strategic points as she spoke. "The Vorthack operate from 7 primary staging areas," she began, each one supporting their expansion into different galactic sectors. "These facilities manufacture their conversion technology, coordinate fleet movements, and serve as rally points for their forces. They're heavily defended, considered impregnable by conventional attack. We've studied those facilities for decades," interrupted Admiral Veltar of the combined fleets. "The defensive arrays alone would require the entire coalition fleet to even attempt an assault, and casualties would be astronomical." "You're thinking conventionally again," Chen replied. "The Vorthack expect conventional attacks because that's how every species in the galaxy fights wars. Massive fleets, overwhelming firepower, territorial control. But humans learned a different way to fight during our exile. We don't attack their strengths. We eliminate their ability to function as a coordinated force. The display zoomed in on one of the staging areas, revealing the complex network of facilities, defensive platforms, and fleet anchorages that protected each installation. Chun highlighted specific points within the complex with precise targeting indicators. These are the control nodes, she explained. The Vorthack Collective operates through quantum-entangled communication networks that link every individual unit to the central command structure. Destroy these nodes, and the entire collective in that sector loses coordination. They become individual units operating on instinct rather than a unified force. Ambassador Threlka's biosuit bubbled with agitation. Even if such an attack were possible, the defenses around those nodes would make approach suicide for any assault force. Not for our ships, Chin said simply. Human vessels are designed to operate in environments that would be lethal to conventional crews. We can survive in combat situations that would destroy unenhanced beings and their equipment. She gestured again, and the display showed a tactical simulation of the proposed attack. Human ships moved through the defensive grids like shadows, striking at precise points before vanishing into the void. The simulation was beautiful in its choreographed precision, but Zeftar couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching something more than military tactics. He was watching artistry born of perfect integration between mind and machine. The simultaneous destruction of all 7 control nodes would fragment the Vorthack forces across the galaxy, Chun continued. Without central coordination, they would be reduced to individual groups that could be dealt with by local defenses. The war would effectively end within 72 hours. The room erupted in discussion, representatives arguing in multiple languages while translation systems struggled to keep up. Some saw the plan as their salvation, others as an impossible dream. But Counselor Vexnim of the Silicon Syndicate raised a question that cut through the noise. Captain Chun, this plan requires perfect timing and execution across vast distances. How do you coordinate such an operation? Even quantum communication has limitations over galactic ranges. Chin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes that made Zeftar's skin prickle. We have our methods, Counselor. Human consciousness, when properly enhanced, can maintain quantum entanglement with other enhanced minds across any distance. We will coordinate this operation through direct mental link. The implications hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just enhanced their bodies and ships, they had enhanced their minds to the point where they could form a collective consciousness when needed. It was uncomfortably close to what the Vorthack had become, but with one crucial difference. Humans retained their individuality when the connection ended. How many of you are there? Zeftar asked quietly. 47 ships, Chin replied. 47 crews, each consisting of 5 enhanced humans. 235 individuals who have dedicated their lives to protecting the galaxy from threats like the Vorthack. The number was shockingly small. The entire coalition fleet consisted of thousands of ships and millions of personnel, yet humanity proposed to end the war with less than 50 vessels and a few hundred people. Either they had become incredibly arrogant during their exile, or they had become something beyond conventional understanding. What do you need from us? Admiral Veltar asked, his tactical mind already working through the implications of the plan. Distraction, Chin replied immediately. The Vorthack must believe they're facing a conventional response. We need coalition fleets to engage their forward elements, draw their attention to standard battle zones while we strike at the control nodes. It will be dangerous for your forces, but not suicidal if they follow specific tactical guidelines we'll provide. General Morduck leaned forward, his massive frame causing the reinforced chair to creak. And if your plan fails? If these control nodes are more heavily defended than your intelligence suggests? Or if the Vorthack have backup coordination methods? For the first time since the meeting began, Captain Chin's composure flickered. Then, we'll have revealed humanity's return to galactic affairs for nothing. And the Vorthack will adapt their defenses to counter our capabilities. The war will continue, but with the enemy knowing exactly what we're capable of. And humanity will face the same extinction as every other species in the galaxy. The stark honesty of the answer settled over the room like a shroud. Chen wasn't promising easy victory or minimal casualties. She was offering a desperate gamble with the fate of galactic civilization as the stakes. Zeftar stood slowly, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. Around the table, the representatives of dozens of species waited for his decision. Outside, the red zones on the tactical displays continued their inexorable expansion toward the core worlds. Captain Chun, he said formally, the Coalition accepts your proposal. Our fleets will provide the distraction you require. But I want to make something clear. If this goes wrong, if humanity has miscalculated the risks or overestimated your capabilities, you won't be the only ones who pay the price. I understand, Commander. But if we don't act, we all pay the price anyway. Chun straightened, her enhanced physiology giving her movements a fluid grace that was subtly inhuman. There's one more thing you need to know about our plan, which is the weapons we've developed, the tactics we'll employ. They're not designed to capture or convert. When we strike the Vorthack installations, nothing will survive. Not their technology, not their converted populations, not the planets themselves if necessary. We learned during the First War that mercy toward the Vorthack is cruelty toward their victims. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Ambassador Kreethel's massive form shifted uneasily. Captain, are you saying you intend to destroy entire worlds? Only if those worlds cannot be saved, Chen replied without hesitation. Vorthack conversion is irreversible. The beings they transform are already dead in every way that matters. What remains is merely organic machinery serving the collective. Destroying that machinery isn't murder, it's mercy. Lieutenant Zara's clicking became agitated. But the populations, the billions of converted beings, surely some method exists to reverse the process. We spent 2 centuries studying that possibility, Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The Vorthack don't just alter bodies and minds, they destroy souls. What they leave behind may look like the original person, may carry their memories and mannerisms, but it's an empty shell animated by the collective will. Death is the only freedom we can give them. The moral implications crashed over the assembled representatives like a tsunami. Humanity was proposing genocide on a galactic scale, the complete eradication of the Vorthack and everything they had touched. It was a solution that violated every principle of coalition law and ethics, yet it might be the only option that guaranteed survival for the rest of the galaxy. How do you know? Zeftar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How can you be certain that conversion is irreversible? Chen's expression became distant, as if she were accessing memories too painful for normal human consciousness to bear. Because we tried, Commander. During the First War, we captured converted populations and spent decades trying to free them from Vorthack control. We found ways to sever their connection to the collective, to restore their individual thought patterns, to remove the biological modifications. She paused, and for a moment her enhanced composure slipped, revealing something raw and ancient underneath. What we discovered was worse than death. The converted beings retained full awareness of what they had become, full memory of the acts they had committed under collective control, but no ability to reconcile those memories with their restored personalities. They begged us to end their suffering. And you did. We gave them the peace they asked for. And we swore that no other species would face that choice. The Vorthack will be completely eradicated, or we will die trying. The meeting continued for several more hours, working out tactical details and coordination protocols, but the essential decision had been made. Humanity would strike at the heart of the Vorthack collective, while coalition forces provided distraction and support. It was a plan born of desperation, implemented by beings who had sacrificed their own humanity to save the galaxy, and executed with technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. As the representatives dispersed to brief their respective fleets, Zeftar remained behind with Captain Chun. The human had been polite and professional throughout the meeting, but he sensed depths beneath her enhanced exterior that defied understanding. "Captain," he said quietly, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Commander. Do you miss it? Being purely human?" Chun was quiet for a long moment, her enhanced consciousness processing the question on multiple levels. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a sadness that no amount of technological augmentation could disguise. "Every day, Commander. But missing what we were is a luxury we can't afford when weighed against what we can become. My people chose enhancement not because we wanted power, but because we recognized our limitations. Pure humanity was beautiful, but it wasn't enough to protect the galaxy from threats like the Vorthack. And when this war is over, when the Vorthack are defeated, what becomes of enhanced humanity? That depends on what the galaxy needs from us," Chun replied. "We've given up the right to live purely for ourselves. Our enhancement came with obligations, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to face threats that would overwhelm conventional forces, to make the hard choices that others cannot make." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Commander Zeftar, there's something else you should know about the coming operation. Win or lose, it will likely be the last time the galaxy sees us. Enhanced humans are not built for peace. When the immediate threat ends, we'll return to the shadows, watching and waiting for the next crisis that requires our intervention. Is that the price of the power you've gained? Eternal isolation? It's the price of the choices we've made," Chun corrected. "Power without accountability is tyranny. Accountability without limitation is sacrifice. We chose sacrifice." As Captain Chun left the conference room, Zeftar remained standing before the tactical displays, watching the red zones that marked Vorthack conquest continue their expansion across the galaxy. In 47 ships spread across the void, enhanced humans prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of every species in known space. The irony wasn't lost on him. To save the galaxy from becoming a lifeless collective, they had turned to beings who had voluntarily given up part of their own humanity. Whether that made them heroes or something else entirely remained to be seen. But as the first reports came in of coalition fleets moving to engage Vorthack advance forces, Zeftar found himself hoping that whatever humanity had become, it would be enough to preserve the future of galactic civilization. Because if Captain Chun and her enhanced crews failed, there would be no second chances, no fallback positions, no hope of survival. The next 72 hours would determine whether the galaxy had a future or whether the Vorthack Collective would finally achieve the total conversion they had sought for millennia. The first phase of the operation began exactly 72 hours after the War Council concluded. Across 17 different star systems, coalition fleets moved into position to engage Vorthack advance forces, their missions carefully coordinated to draw attention away from the 7 primary staging areas that housed the enemy's control nodes. Admiral Veltar commanded the largest of these diversionary forces from the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Stellar Pride. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of over 300 coalition vessels, representing the combined military might of 47 different species. It was the largest fleet action in coalition history, and everyone involved understood that they were essentially bait for a trap that might not even work. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Hesekval, "long-range sensors are detecting Vorthack response fleets moving to intercept. They're taking the bait." Veltar nodded, his 4 arms working different control interfaces simultaneously as he coordinated the complex fleet maneuvers. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Make enough noise to convince the Vorthack that this was the Coalition's desperate final gambit, while the real strike force moved through shadows toward their actual targets. "Signal all ships," he commanded. "Begin preliminary bombardment of their forward positions. Make it look convincing, but don't get drawn into close engagement. We need to maintain fleet integrity for as long as possible." Across the battlefront, Coalition ships opened fire with conventional weapons, their energy beams and kinetic projectiles lighting up space in brilliant displays of destructive force. To outside observers, it looked like the beginning of a massive conventional assault. The Vorthack responded predictably, mobilizing their fleets to crush what appeared to be the coalition's last desperate offensive. But while the attention of both sides focused on the spectacular light show of fleet combat, something else was happening in the deep void between star systems. 47 human ships moved through space like ghosts, their cloaking technology rendering them invisible to conventional sensors, while their enhanced crews guided them toward targets that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Redemption. Her consciousness expanded to encompass not just her own ship, but the entire human fleet through quantum-entangled neural links. Around her, the bridge crew worked with perfect coordination, their enhanced abilities allowing them to process tactical information and execute complex maneuvers with machine-like precision while retaining the creativity and intuition that made them distinctly human. Status report. She subvocalized, her words transmitted directly to the other 46 ship commanders through their neural link. Epsilon Group approaching Target Zone 7. Came the immediate response from Captain Marcus Webb aboard the Vengeance. Vorthack defensive grid is active, but hasn't detected us. Beginning final approach vector. Similar reports flooded through the link from all 7 strike groups, each one consisting of between 6 and 8 human vessels approaching their assigned control nodes. The synchronization was perfect, their movements coordinated with mathematical precision that would have been impossible for unenhanced crews operating through conventional communication systems. But Chun could sense the tension underlying her crew's professional competence. They had trained for this mission for decades, but training and reality were very different things. The Vorthack control nodes were more heavily defended than anything in Coalition intelligence files, their protective systems powered by the same technology that allowed the collective to coordinate across galactic distances. Beginning penetration of outer defensive grid, reported Captain Lisa Zhou from the Retribution. Their sensor arrays are more sophisticated than we anticipated. We're maintaining stealth, but barely. Chun felt the information flow through the neural link, her enhanced consciousness processing the tactical implications in milliseconds. The Vorthack had indeed upgraded their defensive capabilities during their centuries of isolation, but not enough to detect human cloaking technology at maximum efficiency. Maintain current approach vectors, she ordered through the link. All groups advance to secondary positions. Prepare for combat deployment. The human ships moved deeper into the defensive grids surrounding each control node, passing through fields of automated weapons platforms and sensor arrays that could have detected and destroyed conventional fleets within minutes. But human technology had been developed specifically to counter Vorthack capabilities, their ships designed to operate in hostile environments that would be instantly lethal to unenhanced crews. On the bridge of the Redemption, Chun felt the ship's systems responding to her neural interface like extensions of her own body. The boundary between human consciousness and machine capability had been blurred beyond recognition, creating something that was both more and less than either component alone. Target Zone 1 in range, she announced to her immediate crew, initiating final approach. All hands to battle stations. The control node they approached was a massive structure built into the side of a hollowed-out asteroid, its crystalline architecture pulsing with the energy that coordinated millions of Vorthack units across their assigned sector. Around it, defensive platforms bristled with weapons that could reduce planets to cosmic dust, their firepower focused outward to repel conventional attacks. But they weren't facing a conventional attack. Weapons systems online, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant David Kim, his enhanced reflexes already interfaced with the ship's arsenal. All weapons charged and ready for simultaneous deployment. Chin nodded, feeling similar reports flood through the neural link from all 7 strike groups. Across hundreds of light years, enhanced human crews prepared to execute the most complex coordinated assault in galactic history. The timing had to be perfect. Even a few seconds delay could allow the Vorthack to adapt their defenses or coordinate a response. Final countdown, she announced through the neural link. All groups report ready status. Group Alpha ready. Group Beta ready. Group Gamma ready. one by one. The confirmations flowed through the quantum-entangled consciousness that connected every enhanced human in the strike force. They were no longer individual crews operating separate vessels. They had become a single coordinated organism with 47 different physical manifestations. 10 seconds to simultaneous strike, Chen announced. Execute on my mark. The countdown proceeded with mechanical precision, but beneath the enhanced coordination, Chun could sense the very human emotions of her crews. Fear, determination, hope, and resignation all flowed through the neural link as 235 enhanced humans prepared to risk everything on a single coordinated gambit. Mark, across 7 different star systems, human ships emerged from stealth simultaneously, their weapons systems unleashing destruction that had been refined and focused for over 2 centuries of development. But these weren't the crude nuclear weapons or kinetic projectiles that had characterized the First Vorthack War. These were weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level, that could disrupt the fundamental forces holding atomic structures together, that could reach through space-time itself to strike at targets that should have been unreachable. The effect was immediate and devastating. Control Node 1 simply ceased to exist, its crystalline structure dissolving into component particles as human weapons unraveled the quantum bonds holding it together. Around it, defensive platforms fired wildly at targets that were already moving to secondary positions, their automated responses confused by tactics that defied conventional physics. Similar destruction occurred at the other 6 nodes, each one eliminated with surgical precision that left surrounding structures untouched while completely obliterating the quantum coordination systems that bound the Vorthack collective together. It was warfare raised to the level of art, precise and beautiful and utterly terrifying in its implications. But the Vorthack response was immediate and overwhelming. Chun, Captain Webb's voice cracked through the neural link, tinged with alarm. Something's wrong at Node 7. The structure is regenerating. Through the quantum-entangled link, Chen experienced Webb's tactical situation as if it were her own. The control node they had just destroyed was indeed reconstructing itself. Crystalline matrices rebuilding from quantum templates that existed outside normal space-time. The Vorthack had developed backup systems that even human intelligence hadn't anticipated. All groups, report status, she ordered, feeling her enhanced consciousness strain to process information from 7 different battlefields simultaneously. Node 2 destroyed but showing signs of quantum resurrection, came the report from Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the Justice. Node 4 eliminated, defensive grid collapsing, reported Captain John Harrison from the Freedom. Node 6 destroyed completely. No regeneration detected, confirmed Captain Maria Santos from the Liberty. The pattern became clear within seconds. 3 of the 7 control nodes possessed quantum backup systems that allowed them to reconstruct themselves from stored templates. The human strike had succeeded partially, but not completely. Half the Vorthack collective remained coordinated while the other half descended into chaos. Chun, Webb's voice was tight with combat stress. We're taking heavy fire from regenerated defensive systems. Request immediate support. But support was exactly what Chen couldn't provide. The human strike force had been designed for surgical precision, not sustained combat. Their ships were built for stealth and devastating alpha strikes, not prolonged engagements against hardened targets. They had gambled everything on a single coordinated attack, and the gamble had failed. All groups initiate withdrawal protocols, she ordered through the neural link. We need to regroup and reassess. But even as the human ships began their retreat, alarms flooded through the neural link from multiple sources. The partially disrupted Vorthack collective was adapting with terrifying speed, their remaining coordination nodes compensating for the destroyed systems while mobilizing every available unit to hunt down the human strike force. Chun, Captain Zhou's voice cracked with urgent warning. Mass Vorthack fleet movement detected. They're converging on all withdrawal vectors. Through her enhanced consciousness, Chen felt the tactical situation collapse around them. The Vortak had somehow anticipated their escape routes, positioning fleets to intercept the human ships as they withdrew from the combat zones. It was a trap within a trap, and they had walked directly into it. How? She transmitted to her tactical analysis team. How did they predict our withdrawal patterns? The answer came from Lieutenant Kim, his enhanced intellect processing vast amounts of combat data in real time. They learned from our attack patterns, Captain. The quantum coordination systems they maintained during our strike analyzed our tactics and extrapolated our most likely escape vectors. They're not just adapting, they're evolving in real time. It was Chen's worst nightmare realized. The Vortak Collective possessed the ability to learn and adapt from combat experience, incorporating new tactical knowledge into their collective consciousness faster than any individual species could develop countermeasures. The human strike force had revealed their capabilities to an enemy that could turn those same capabilities against them. All groups, emergency protocols, she ordered, her enhanced mind racing through increasingly desperate options. Scate formation, random victor. Make them spread their forces to pursue us. But even as the human ships dispersed across multiple star systems, Chen knew they were in trouble. Their stealth systems were compromised, their tactics had been analyzed and countered, and they faced an enemy that could coordinate pursuit across galactic distances while learning from every engagement. The neural link carried reports of running battles as human ships fought desperate rearguard actions against overwhelming Vortak forces. Captain Webb's group was pinned down in the asteroid fields around Node 7, using the unstable gravity fields to mask their signatures while Vortak hunters closed in from all directions. Captain Santos had lost 2 ships to quantum mines that materialized in their escape vector, weapons that shouldn't have existed according to human intelligence estimates. Chun, came Webb's voice, strained with exhaustion and combat stress. We can't maintain this. They're learning our countermeasures faster than we can implement them. At this rate, they'll adapt to everything we've got within hours. Chun felt the truth of his words through the neural link. The enhanced human crews were fighting at the absolute limits of their capabilities, but they were outnumbered thousands to 1 by an enemy that could process combat data and develop countermeasures in real time. Every tactic they employed, every weapon they fired, every evasive maneuver they executed was being analyzed and turned against them. But surrender wasn't an option. If the human strike force was captured or destroyed, the Vortak would gain access to enhancement technology that could make them truly unstoppable. The galaxy couldn't afford to have the collective acquire human capabilities. All groups, she transmitted through the neural link, her voice carrying the weight of absolute command, initiate Protocol 7. The response was immediate and shocked. Chun, you can't be serious, came Captain Harrison's voice. Protocol 7 has never been tested in combat conditions. The risks are acceptable compared to the alternative. Chun cut him off. If we're captured, if our technology falls into their hands, the galaxy dies. Protocol 7 prevents that outcome. Protocol 7 was the most classified and controversial capability in the human arsenal, a complete merger of consciousness across the neural link, creating a single overmind from all enhanced humans in the strike force. It would give them coordination capabilities that even the Vortak Collective couldn't match, but at the cost of individual identity and agency. When the protocol ended, there was no guarantee that the separate personalities would successfully reemerge. All crews acknowledge, Chun ordered. Execute Protocol 7 on my mark. One by one, the confirmations came through the neural link, each one representing a decision to sacrifice individual existence for the greater good. 235 enhanced humans prepared to merge their consciousness into a single entity capable of fighting the Vortak on equal terms. But as Chun prepared to give the final command, new alarms flooded through the tactical displays. Coalition reinforcements were arriving in all 7 combat zones, their fleets moving to support the embattled human ships with massive displays of conventional firepower. All human vessels, this is Admiral Veltar of Coalition Command, came a transmission on standard frequencies. We're here to provide support. Your mission parameters have changed. Survival is now the priority. Chun felt a surge of emotion through the neural link as coalition ships engaged Vorthack forces around each control node. The diversionary fleets had broken off their feint attacks and were committing everything they had to rescue the human strike force, even though it meant abandoning their original tactical objectives. But the coalition fleets were still operating with conventional tactics against an enemy that had learned to counter human capabilities. They would be slaughtered unless something changed the tactical balance. Protocol 7 remains authorized, Chen announced through the neural link. Coalition support gives us the distraction we need to execute properly. All crews prepare for consciousness merger. Chun, wait, came Captain Webb's voice, tight with a realization that chilled the neural link. Look at the tactical displays again. The Vorthack aren't just learning from our combat data. They're learning from the coalition fleets too. They're adapting to everything simultaneously. Through her enhanced consciousness, Chun processed the combat data from all 7 battlefields and felt her enhanced blood turn cold. The Vorthack Collective wasn't just analyzing human tactics. It was processing every tactical innovation, every weapon signature, every coordination protocol used by any species fighting against them. They were rapidly becoming immune to all conventional military capabilities. The galaxy didn't just face conquest anymore. It faced an enemy that could learn from and counter any possible resistance, no matter how advanced or innovative. The Vorthack were becoming militarily omnipotent, and the only possible countermeasure was something that had never been tested and might destroy the human strike force even if it succeeded. Protocol 7 authorized, Chen said quietly. Execute on my mark. Mark. Across 7 star systems, the consciousness of 47 human ship crews began to merge into something that had never existed before, a collective intelligence built on voluntary cooperation rather than forced conversion, capable of coordination beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. But as individual human awareness dissolved into the emerging overmind, one terrifying question remained. Would what emerged from the merger still be human enough to remember what it was fighting to protect?